same scenario. Win, 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 yeah, we on a roll. Yeah, 2, 4, 6, we like 10 and 0.
Just a crazy game. You never fall asleep early during the Baltimore and Pittsburgh games.
Well, if you fell asleep early during the Pittsburgh and Baltimore game, I am sorry to inform you, but you missed out on an all-time great finish to an all-time great game. It was a crazy ending to a phenomenal game all around as the Pittsburgh Steelers defeated the Baltimore Ravens 26-24 in Sunday Night Football. They are kings of the North for the first time since 2020 and are heading back to the playoffs once again. And what a way to cap off the 2025 NFL regular season. The NFL did an amazing job by deciding to put that game in primetime to close out the final game of the year. Great game all around. So much was at stake in that game. Win and get in. Two longtime rivals going at it. And when you have a finish like that, the NFL is justified for making that Sunday Night Football, because I know a lot of people wanted the battle for the NFC #1 seed to be that Sunday Night Football game, but man, those people were so wrong. That game deserved to be in prime time 11 times out of 10. There were so many different ranges of emotion at that game if you were a Steelers fan, and I was down on the sideline shooting it for Black and Gold Nation, so I kind of got the whole up-close experience to everything that transpired in the friendly confines of Acrisure Stadium. So many different ranges of emotion throughout that night. You had anger early on. Fans weren't happy with the offense early on in that game. Fans, honestly, early on in that game, didn't really have any energy in Acrisure Stadium. It wasn't until that game picked up that place started getting rocking. But there was frustration from the fan base. Zay Flowers, of course, going off in that fourth quarter for 2 touchdowns. The 4th and 7 conversion to Isaiah Likely. The 26-yard pass from Lamar Jackson to him that picks up a big first down, puts Baltimore in field goal range. Tears of sadness were happening from Steelers fans. But very quickly, that turned into tears of joy. That turned into happiness for Steelers fans. There were so many highs in that game. So many lows, but we're riding the highs today. And that is why we watch sports, because of that finish that happened yesterday. That is why we love sports. That is why you play the games. That is not why the games are played on paper. It doesn't matter if you're a 3-point underdog or a 4-point underdog entering the game. You play the games for a reason. You have everything happen for a reason. All I could think of after that 4th and 7 likely conversion that put Baltimore into field goal range is that it was likely it for the Pittsburgh Steelers season. I was thinking, man, there's no way this season can end like this. There's no way Mike Tomlin's time in Pittsburgh can potentially end this way. No way that Aaron Rodgers' final game potentially ends this way. No way that maybe even potentially Cam Hayward's final game ends this way. And Hayward, by the way, played a phenomenal game for the Steelers from start to finish. All I could think is this couldn't be how the season ends. Listening to all the losers talk after the game, it was so depressing. And I was thinking, we can't go into the locker room like this after the game. It was so depressing. I did not want to walk into that locker room after what probably was going to be a heartbreaking loss. But like I said, you play the games for a reason. You play the plays for a reason. One thought after that likely conversion came into my mind, and it was, you can't trust a college kicker. I get it. Tyler Loop is an NFL kicker. He is a rookie. He's not Justin Tucker. Steelers fans are very familiar with how automatic Justin Tucker was pretty much every single time he played against the Steelers, except for maybe last year. but Tucker was a guy that was always automatic for the majority of his career. And I was thinking, you can't trust a college kicker. Tyler Loop is a rookie. Anything can happen. You can never trust a young kicker. As he trots out there for the biggest moment of his career, kicks it, goes wide right in Scott Norwood fashion. Acrisure Stadium erupted. The Steelers bench erupted. That was the first time in over more than 60,000 field goal attempts in NFL history. First time that a miss happened as time expired in the final week of the season, with both teams having this game decide if they're going to make it to the playoffs or not. First time in NFL history that happened. Maybe there was a little bit of divine intervention. Listen, I believe in God. I'm Catholic. I grew up as a Catholic here. Maybe God is a Steelers fan in this whole grand scheme of things. If you didn't see before the game, a local priest, a priest from St. Vincent, the place that the Steelers practice at during training camp, St. Vincent's very own Maximilian Maxwell, phenomenal name by the way, put holy water in the south end zone. End of the game, that's exactly where Tyler Loop is kicking. He is kicking to the south end zone. And in the crowd, in the middle of the uprights, there's a guy holding a sign that is a Bible verse, John 3:16. Maybe there was divine intervention in this game. Maybe the Steelers are a team of destiny, because I gave you that stat right there. Over 60,000 field goals have been attempted in NFL history. That is the first time a miss ever happened in the final week of the season when both teams have their playoff hopes riding on that kick. It's so much more amazing how you feel about this team after a win. Man, last week I was depressed talking about this team. They've been very inconsistent all year. I think that's still very true. But man, I had no optimism entering yesterday's game. I didn't know how to feel after that loss to Cleveland because the Steelers didn't give you any reason to be optimistic after that loss to Cleveland. But so much can change in a week. We go from that kick, potentially talking about the futures of John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, to talking about the Steelers' futures of Aaron Rodgers and Mike Tomlin. The pendulum swung on both sides in that one. All the questions that were being asked to the Ravens yesterday about Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh, if that kick goes through, those questions are likely being asked to Aaron Rodgers and Mike Tomlin after the game about their futures. But last week, you wake up depressed. This week, we see all sunshine and rainbows. That is the beauty of this game. That is the beauty of the season. And listen, we could go back and talking about this team, about how, they haven't competed in the playoffs since 2017. They haven't been competitive, I should rather say. They haven't won a playoff game since 2017. We can have all that discussion all we want another day. But man, let's take a moment today and enjoy that victory. Be present in the moment. Enjoy what transpired last night. Because that is an all-time great game. That is a game that is going to be talked about for years and years to come. It's going to go down in history as one of the greatest Steelers and Ravens game of this century. It was a phenomenal game, phenomenal season. And you know what? Maybe things could be different for Pittsburgh this season. I talked a little bit about divine intervention earlier. Maybe the Steelers are a team of destiny. Maybe this year can be different and they can get over the playoff hump. Maybe it helped by having maybe a so-called de facto playoff game the week before the playoffs to kind of get that monkey off your back. Because that felt like a playoff game to me yesterday. For the second half, that felt like a playoff atmosphere in Acrisure Stadium. And I'll give you 3 reasons here on why I think this could maybe potentially be different for the Pittsburgh Steelers entering this postseason as compared to previous postseasons. And I know I'm going to get a little carried away after I just talked about enjoying that victory. But I have some optimism about yesterday's game, and you should too if you're a fan. They gave you a lot to be optimistic about. The AFC playoff picture gives you something to be optimistic about. So here are the 3 reasons why I think maybe this year can be different for Pittsburgh. Number 1, you don't face a juggernaut quarterback in the playoffs. The only guy that fits that category is Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, and he's a 7th seed. The cards are stacked against him. And if he wins in the first round, he's got to go into Mile High and play Denver. You don't have to worry about probably a juggernaut quarterback. But if you do have to face him, it's going to be later on. It would have to be the AFC Championship, just based off of how seeding works in the AFC and the NFL with playoffs in general. But you don't face a juggernaut quarterback because Patrick Mahomes isn't in the playoffs. He is maybe the biggest dragon, the biggest hurdle in every AFC team's way because he has just been that guy who's been unstoppable whenever the calendar turns January and February over the past few years. You don't have to worry about Patrick Mahomes. You don't have to worry about Lamar Jackson. You just beat Lamar Jackson in a de facto playoff game. And we could have a separate discussion too. Is Lamar the same guy that he was earlier in his career? Maybe not as much. Maybe injuries are starting to catch up. It's not as explosive as a runner. Because I think if this is Lamar of like 4 years ago, I think we would have saw him take off and have some pretty big runs yesterday. That didn't happen. And you don't have Joe Burrow in that potent Cincinnati Bengals offense in the postseason either. Like the quarterbacks that are in the postseason are Bo Nix, Drake May, Trevor Lawrence, Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen, CJ Stroud, and a banged up Justin Herbert. And this leads to my second point here. The AFC is wide open. I talked about no juggernaut quarterback. It's not really a juggernaut team either. Sure, there are teams that have some great pieces, some solid quarterbacks. I don't want to call them the juggernauts, though. Solid defenses. You're going to see one of them on Monday night. But to me, there's no team that you would enter the playoffs saying, I'm afraid of facing this team. There's just no team, in my opinion, that is like that to me. You don't have those Chiefs. You don't have maybe the Bills at the height of their powers, or the Patriots, I should say, at the height of their powers with Tom Brady and company when they have been so successful in the postseason. No team that you're scared of running into, even if you're an underdog like the Steelers were heading into yesterday's game against Baltimore. And I believe they're going to enter Houston on Monday night as underdogs as well. But I talked about the AFC being wide open this year. Listen, nobody would have expected Denver to be the number 1 seed at the beginning of the year. Nobody would have expected probably New England to be the 2nd seed entering the year. I talk about no juggernaut quarterbacks, AFC wide open. The third reason maybe that this year can be different for the Steelers is that they have a guy under center that they have a lot of confidence in. Aaron Rodgers. He is a guy that has been there and done that. He has been fairly successful in the postseason over the course of his career. Heck, he's a guy with a Super Bowl ring, a Lombardi trophy, and his man cave probably in the Malibu. He stays cool, calm, and collected in big moments. He carries that aura of the RELAX, relax. He is even-killed. Cool as a cucumber, whatever you want to define it as. Aaron Rodgers is comfortable in the big moments, and he showed that in yesterday's game. 2:20 left in the game. Aaron Rodgers gets the ball back, has to drive the length of the field to score a touchdown, and does that for the Steelers. It wasn't always pretty on that drive. He had helmet issues. Kind of a wild sequence there toward the end of the game where he couldn't hear the play call come in from Arthur Smith. uses a timeout, which everybody thought, including myself, why are we burning the timeouts here? Because you're going to probably need them on defense, especially after Zay Flowers and Lamar Jackson were just marching down the field and had back-to-back really big plays on you on back-to-back drives. You thought this wasn't a good idea. So Aaron takes the timeout, tries to get his helmet resolved, grabs a backup helmet, goes back into the game. Nobody would have expected that helmet not to work either, especially after he turned down getting the wristband from Mason Rudolph. But then Aaron decided once again, listen, this is a too big of a situation right now. I can call the plays, but I would rather have Arthur Smith do it in this situation. I want to get this right. I don't care if we burn the timeouts because we need to have this drive go just right for us. It is a pivotal drive for us. Aaron Rodgers uses that second timeout, or the third timeout, I should say, second of that drive there. He knew that moment was so massive that he couldn't just wing it. He also knows how to trust his players. No DK Metcalf in this game. Receiving core under a lot of scrutiny after that loss to Cleveland, and rightfully so. But he knows to trust his guys. Calvin Austin entering that huddle before the play that Austin had that touchdown. It was a 3-receiver by 1-receiver set. Calvin Austin is the guy all alone on the backside of that formation. And the huddle, Aaron Rodgers has trust in Calvin Austin to go up to him and ask him, Calvin, what do you want to run here? Calvin didn't give him a straight answer, but Aaron ultimately put him in a position to succeed, but also trusted his guy as well. If Calvin would have said, hey, I know we can hit the hitch and go. We can score on this. I think Aaron would have trusted him there. But Aaron, he told him, run the hitch and go. Worked out well that the guy that was covering Calvin Austin fell. Maybe that's a sign of divine intervention once again there, because the guy fell on completely nothing on that field. But Aaron Rodgers knows how to trust his guys. He gives that locker room confidence. And it makes sense too. Whenever you look in the locker and you have one of the top 10 all-time quarterbacks playing for you, a guy who has won a Super Bowl, been successful in the playoffs, you should have confidence in him to lead you to the promised land, to lead you to victory, to step up in those big moments, because big players step up in big moments. And we saw Aaron Rodgers do that. He went 11 of 14 for 133 yards and 1 touchdown in that fourth quarter. He hit big throws to Calvin Austin, Pat Freiermuth, Adam Thielen. You can make an argument if you want. This was Aaron Rodgers' best game passing-wise. He did this without DK Metcalf in the game. But Aaron Rodgers has been pretty good as of late as well. He's heating up at the right time. Other than that loss to Cleveland, he has been playing pretty well in 4 out of his past 5 games. That is a guy that you want hot, ready to roll whenever it comes time for January football. And if the Steelers get that fourth quarter version of Aaron that we saw in yesterday's game, they can make some noise in the AFC playoffs for all the reasons I listed. It's a wide open field. No juggernaut teams in this field. No juggernaut quarterbacks in this field. And if Aaron Rodgers is playing well, gives you all the confidence in the world that this team can make a run. Steelers have Houston on Monday night on ESPN. Kind of big for the Steelers to have an extra day of rest. Those series against Baltimore always beat up Pittsburgh. But if you're Pittsburgh, I mean, you have to be happy because you walk away from that game with just bumps and bruises, no major injuries. As I said earlier, you get a guy back in DK Metcalf. And that's big against a good Houston defense. But also, I watched that Houston game yesterday thinking that that is likely going to be the matchup for the Steelers. And also, I just like watching NFL football in general. That's my favorite sport to watch by far. But I watched that. Houston sat a lot of guys in the second half, including CJ Stroud. But the first half of that game, Riley Leonard makes his first career NFL start and kind of diced up that defense. Riley Leonard looked good against a vaunted Houston defense that maybe could also give you some credit, can also give you maybe a little bit of a blueprint on what to do to beat this Houston defense. Houston's been hot lately, but that streak's got to end at some point, right? Streaks are meant to be broken. Steelers can break that on Monday Night Football against the Texans. We're going to take a quick break here on Black and Gold Overtime. When I return, we're going to talk a little bit more about that Steelers and Ravens game, an all-time great game. Looking forward to talking about it more with you next here on Black and Gold Overtime.
Ooh, here we go. Back again, same scenario. Win, 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 win. Yeah, we on a roll. Yeah, 2, 4, 6. We like 10 and 0.
Just gotta love football, man. What a memorable edition of the Steelers and Ravens rivalry from yesterday. Just phenomenal game. I am riding on 4 hours of sleep. I ended up getting back from work at 4 a.m. this morning. Went to bed. I mean, it was hard for me to go to bed originally because I was just so fired up from that game, from watching that game, from the finish of that game, that I knew I had to get a couple hours of sleep before coming in today and doing that program. And man, I only had 4 hours of sleep. I don't even know. I lost count at this point. But it's one of those things that a win like that can just spark so much energy into you, so much happiness. Because as I said earlier, if this was a loss, it'd be all doom and gloom. We'd be all depressed right now. We have a different sight on life right now. It's 20 degrees outside. It is cold, but man, it does not feel like that. It feels like it is sunny and 75 outside right now. So much was riding on that game yesterday for both teams. It was arguably maybe one of the most important games of this rivalry in a long, long time. There's been plenty of noise about the futures for John Harbaugh, for Mike Tomlin, especially on a day like today. That would have been the discussion we would have had, because today is known as Black Monday across the NFL, where all these head coaches and GMs get fired. Cleveland Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski was one of those guys earlier today. But no matter what coach was losing that game, the discussion was going to pop up that, is this the end of the line for those coaches? Maybe it's a separate discussion today for Mike Tomlin. Maybe it's a discussion that the Steelers should pick up Mike Tomlin's option in 2027. Listen, Mike Tomlin, I think, has been coaching with more of a chip on his shoulder ever since that loss to Buffalo. Ever since the Fire Tomlin chants rained down on Acrisure Stadium. Tomlin's been more aggressive. I think he has been more passionate. I saw it yesterday in pregame. We've seen it lately after the games as well. I love it. I love seeing it from him. The beat in his chest, the kiss in the camera, the little walk back to the locker room, the little shots that he'll take it at a reporter or two. That's what gives me confidence, Brooke. Tomlin has been coaching with a chip on his shoulder. He feels like a different coach than what we're used to in Pittsburgh. I'm kind of on board with Mike Tomlin coming back next year. And it's crazy because after that Buffalo loss, I came on this very program and I said, maybe it's time. Maybe it's the beginning of the end. Now, of course, we could have that discussion. Mike Tomlin needs to have more postseason success. They've not been competitive in the playoffs since 2017. If they get blown out by the Houston Texans, there's a chance that discussion pops back up. But I'm a prisoner of this moment right now. This team has been playing super hard in 4 out of the past 5 games. They've shown a lot of resiliency. Guys talked about it after the game. They're kind of taking the shape. This team has taken the shape of its head coach in Mike Tomlin. From what I saw from Mike Tomlin yesterday, I know there's the discussion that he might go into TV. I don't think he's a guy that looks like he wants to go into TV. I think he's a guy that still wants to coach football, and I think he wants to coach football in a town like Pittsburgh as well. I think he'd be the first to tell you that, hey, we have had a lack of postseason success here. It does not meet the standard of this franchise. But man, he is going to be motivated to try and flip the switch here. We're going to take one more quick break here on Black and Gold Overtime. When I return, I am going to hand out Riley's report card for the regular season finale. I have all that more next here on Black and Gold Overtime. All right, I got to hand out some of the fastest grades of my life here with 45 seconds to go in the program here. Special teams, D, they almost blew it. Boswell's missed extra point. Long return after that kick as well. Defensive back, C-, they almost blew the game too, giving up big plays to Zay Flowers. Linebackers, B. Defensive line, B+. Derrick Henry, 13 rushing yards in the second half. Great performance by them. Offensive line, A. Wide receivers, B. Running backs, B+. And your quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, I am going to go with an A. Phenomenal win by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Enjoy the rest of your Victory Monday, everybody. Take care. That's all the time that I have for Black and Gold Overtime.